Bree Groff is a transformation expert and advisor. She consults to companies like Google and Microsoft and Pfizer. Her newest book is Today Was Fun, a book about work seriously. Welcome to the show, Bree.
Oh, thank you for having me, George.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal lives, more about your work, and what motivated you to put pen to paper and write the book.
Sure. Yeah. So, um, life-wise, first, I grew up in Chicago, daughter of a kindergarten teacher and an elementary school principal. I grew up and bopped around in my 20s from trying to be an actor to being a high school physics teacher and a few other fun detours. I found my way, I know it's a lot of like yada, 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 found my way to consulting. Um, and have been doing organizational design, organizational change, transformation, employee experience, culture, all that kind of work now for decade plus at a few different consultancies. I was the CEO of Nobel Collective, an organizational design and change consultancy, a partner at SY Partners, and now working full time on this book. So that's professionally. Personally, I also have a super cool husband. I have a 10-year-old daughter who's hilarious. And and I take care of my father who has Alzheimer's. So that's my ecosystem, and I'm in New York. Oh,
Well,
and
that
you
is,
asked me more questions too. Okay. This is what happens when we record at 9 a.m. I wrote the book because I felt like I had amassed all of these learnings about how to both lead a joyful team, which I have done many times within an organization or project teams. Consulting, I've gotten to peer inside dozens of organizations to see their cultures and interview their employees about what makes a good day at work. And then on a personal level, I mentioned my father, but my mother, I cared for her for about 9 months after a terminal cancer diagnosis until she died in 2022. And that just, it really gave me the perspective that we run out of Mondays at some point. And it bothered me philosophically, but also like existentially and urgently that we were as a it's a sort of a society like just wishing away the week like oh I have to get through this Monday, is it only Wednesday, when can it be Friday, when really those are the finite days that we are given on the planet. And so if we are wishing them away, then we are wishing away a good portion of our life. So from that came Today Was Fun.
well, I think that there are so many different strings to pull here this morning, Bree. So that's awesome. High school physics was my least favorite experience as a human being. So it's weird that you would want to
Oh
teach that. Yeah.
no. This is super weird.
Which, of course, you're kidding. You obviously had a different experience, but having the opportunity to work with so many different organizations and to have that experience with the most loved people in your life certainly does make sense why you'd write the book. I've always been fond of saying there's only 50 Saturdays a year, and I know that there's 52. But we were talking offline about how, you really appreciate a perfect Saturday when the sun is out and you can go and do whatever you were
Mm,
looking to do, but that we're just blowing past Mondays, but that we run out of Mondays is a more valuable way to think about that because we do have a tendency to not like our jobs for some reason.
yeah, and even when we do, we still sort of like I've talked to so many people who are like, "Oh, I like my job," who are still victims of the Sunday scaries, who are still like, feeling that sense of dread every week, which is such a drastic word, but it's actually one that's been measured in the social side. Like people dread their jobs. And it doesn't, it just doesn't strictly need to be that way because I think as a society, we tend to equate struggle with greatness or anything worth doing won't come easily. But it's something, sure, but it's just not strictly true because in businesses, you don't get paid because work is painful. You get paid because you create value. And so if we can find what's inherently there in work, which is it's fun to use our skills. It's fun to build with other people. It's fun to make other people's lives better. Then we realize the pain is like kind of optional. Sometimes we do that to ourselves.
Yeah, right. We do associate things of value with discomfort or sacrifice or, waking up really early and doing something hard, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. And also it's like the quality of that pain matters. Like if you're training for a marathon, that's painful, but
Hmm.
it's worth it because you chose it and it's making you better. That's different than the pain of like getting beat up, which I think is sometimes more the quality of the pain that we associate with work, which is my boss, my company expects that I have to do this. It's not something, I mean, you obviously chose the job, but you don't choose the late nights. You don't feel like you choose to be stuck in the drudgery. And so it's not that all pain is bad, but it's the quality of the struggle and whether we choose that for growth or whether it's put upon us really matters.
Yeah, certainly. Sense of agency.
Hmm.
So I think that you mentioned something about what does a great day at work look like? Is that, and I'm sort of jumping ahead,
Sure.
um, or maybe I'm not, as I like what I do. I enjoy
Yay.
doing what I do. Right. That's not always been the case. Um, but I've always realized and recognized that I can and I have the agency to be able to make changes or to think about things differently. So if I am somebody who wants to not dread Mondays, not dread what I do, what's the starting point?
Yeah. So if you are, so there's the kind of fork in the road that's like, am I in the wrong job or career? That's a
Mm.
legit question. And primarily not the question that I think about because, well, that one is important. And you should leave your job if you can, because also unemployment, also not fun. If you like generally like your job, but you're just like not having good days and you feel like you're in a grind and you're starting like the ennui is starting to set in, then a few things you can do in like in broad brushstrokes, and we can also talk more details. One is just to make it more social and less professional. That sometimes what feels dreadful is the feeling that we have to like button ourselves up and be a certain version of ourselves and be professional. And in that, we sort of mask our humanity. It's like putting our business mask on. That is a widely prevalent source of dread. To undo some of that is simply trying whatever feels safe enough or that you can experiment with to be a little less professional, a little more human, and with it a little bit more social. Um, so, for example, like before we started recording, I told you I was still kind of getting my act together. Like I had my headphones all twisted. It was just me being me as opposed to stressing that I didn't have my headphones in at that moment. And so um, at work, this can look like, I don't know, dressing a little bit more casually and having that be okay, or dressing in the way that makes you happy. You dress in a ball gown or a suit. I don't, you know. It's also a little bit more relational. Sometimes the fastest way to feel better about your workday is to make someone else's workday better. And if you've made their day, that feels good to you. And also, it's more likely to create a sort of a positive feedback loop in the team. And so that can look like anything from taking a task off someone else's plate. I always love it in those political thrillers where the fixer's like, consider it handled. And, like, don't you want someone to do that for you at work?
That'd be
Like,
pretty great.
right? Like, George, I know there's this podcast and you have to like think about the edits and everything. Consider it done, you know?
Yes.
Right. And
Thanks a
so,
lot, Bree. That's awesome.
oh my God, you don't want my editing skills. It would just be all bloopers, is what it would be. And there'd be like no actual, like actionable content. So, because that's what I find funny. But yeah, can you do that for a friend at work? Can you shoot like a little note of gratitude towards them? So there's lots of ways, lots of discrete things that you can do, but generally, the fastest way to a better day is more humanity and more connection, because that's what we as humans thrive on. Like the long-term studies of happiness, like it's actually pretty clear what makes humans happy, and that's the quality of our relationships over the course of our lives. And so sometimes we forget that at work. And in order to strengthen those relationships, we have to show up as like real humans. It's just so much harder to build a relationship when you're like, oh, good morning. How are you today? Good. How are you? Let's look at the agenda and unpack our action items. Like that feels qualitatively different than like, hey, I'm camera off because I slipped getting out of the shower. I threw off my back, and now I'm horizontal. Good morning to you. Like
Right.
now you're like, something about the person. It's like a little funny. You're trying not to laugh. You hope they're okay. Like now all of a sudden you're in a social situation as opposed to one that feels performative in some way.
Yeah, well, I totally get that. More humanity, more connection. Remember that movie Joe versus the Volcano? Did you ever see that one? What's
No.
important is it's really good. It's one of Tom Hanks's early movies. So
Ooh,
if you,
okay.
yeah, it's delightful. But he has a factory job and it's like in the basement and it's these fluorescent lights and everybody hates it. So that kind of jumped into my mind. It doesn't have to be that way. Um, are we getting better or worse? I mean, it's like there's so many different elements pressing against us all the time. In politics, we're so divisive there, and everybody has
Yeah.
causes, and which is fine, but it's like we're walking on eggshells around each other. So being more human. I don't want to get fired. I don't want to offend anybody. Headwinds, Bree. More.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. And I don't consider this like the book I wrote or even my career political, but in some ways I do strongly feel that it would be a better world politically and culturally if we were all a bit more human with each other. And by that, I don't mean, I think when I say be more human at work, people sometimes interpret that 10 different ways. Like there's the bring your whole self to work argument, which I like generally believe in, but also sort of gets fun mirrored into this like, well, are you just going to talk about like sex, drugs, and rock and roll at work? Like, that's not appropriate. But that's not what I mean. It's not like you have to be like, hey, coworker, here's the story of how I lost my virginity. It's like,
Right.
hey, my kid is sick, and so I'm just going to have to leave a little early. And it's like so annoying. And like, but I feel bad. And it's just like letting people into your world a little bit more, or um, that sort of like, allowing people to see you as the three-dimensional human you are. It also helps to sort of like de-escalate any, well, as you were mentioning, like any tensions around like ideological tensions, whether that's political or even just like in the workplace differences of like, I think we should do this and you should. It's even in like disagreements, if you can see the other person for all of their hopes and fears and you, the fact that maybe they put on two different socks today because they were dressing in the dark, like it's so much easier to come at them with understanding rather than like putting up a fight. And so um I actually wrote an article recently on how to disagree at work a little bit better. And get ready for this. This is super professional advice. I said, the number one thing you want to do is remember the other person farts. Like, just remember, like, remember that because somehow it takes it down from like, oh, this person is like some sort of, I don't know, my opponent, my fierce opponent that I need to go after to like, this is a very humany human. Sometimes they have gas. Like, that's a really different relationship. Um, And so I guess a long way of saying, I think humanizing the workplace and each other can only do good things.
I agree wholeheartedly, recognizing that we are way, 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 way more similar to each other than we are different, even though it feels like we are totally different from one another a lot of the time. And you could look at, so I think that that's right. Um, is it important to have a shared sense of the work that we're doing, whatever it is important and of value? You and I are at
Yes.
the same
So I
company.
also, oh, sorry.
No, not at all. I was going to try to elaborate, but I think I
Yeah. Um, so I have a sort of a complicated relationship with purpose in companies because quite literally, I think it's a very good thing. If like you and I are working at the same company and we're working towards some shared goal, like fundamentally companies are sort of like self-expression at scale or like a hope for the world at scale. So we as a company think whatever it should be. Like we believe in oral health because we're a tooth care company or like a toothpaste company. And so therefore we all believe in this in oral hygiene. And so we're working together. And that's cool for 1,000 different reasons because we sort of get to like pull the sled in the same direction and feel like we're part of a team. It's cool that we share some beliefs. It's cool that we can agree on some impact that we all want to see and then cheer together when we see it. So that's all good. I think, though, the notion of purpose at work or meaning at work sometimes gets hijacked within a culture of overworking. So, where I don't like it is when people within an organization are struggling, they're burnt out, they're not spending time on friends, family, exercise, all the other beautiful parts of their life. And the organization not necessarily the CEO, but just like the organizational culture is saying, well, we're sacrificing, but it's worth it. It's going to be worth it. We're doing this thing that's so important. And I think sometimes purpose gets weaponized in that way. And oral hygiene is important. That is great. But what's also important is all of the employees' like arteries and their friends and family and children and the fact that they should be able to relax and not just relax as a means of doing more work, but relax because they're humans and they get to relax sometimes. And so, um, so I think it's, just like the dose makes the poison. So too with purpose and shared meaning, it's great um, as a means of inspiring and coming together, and it can be overdone when we start to enter the struggle equals greatness end of things.
the dose equals the poison or makes the poison, I think is a wonderful way to think about that because yeah, we've been beat over the heads with purpose and values and meaning it and all that kind of stuff. And we're just human beings who fart and trying to do this whole thing together. When things are overly engineered, then they're overly engineered and it feels fake and it's BS and we just want authenticity and community. So can we just do that? But it's hard to
Yeah.
do just do anything. Just do it, Bree, is good advice for a sneaker company. But if I don't know how to do it, and particularly if I'm in an organization, I would think, I'm the CEO or I'm the owner or whatever, and I want the people I'm working with who are helping my organization to grow to be happy and to do the things that you've been describing. So how do I set the conditions? What is the right question I should be asking?
Yeah. So there's sort of like big structural things you can do, and then there's local immediate things you can do. The big structural things, that's what I've spent my years consulting on, right? Like the big projects where we're overhauling how a company talks about itself or a North Star or even like processes or systems. I won't get into that now, but you could hire a consultancy to help you with that. The local daily stuff, I find like I think it's even more important. So, especially if you're a CEO, I would say just start with your leadership team because a group of people that's 5, 10, 12, that's that's a small enough of a community that you can change the culture simply by showing up a little bit differently. One exercise that I love that like I feel like cures 80% of team ailments is a simple check-in. So when you're getting together for if it's a daily stand-up, a weekly meeting, say, okay, how's everybody doing? On a scale of 1 to 5, put it on your fingers, 3, 2, 1, shoot. And then everyone puts up, I'm a 4, I'm a 2, I'm a 3. And then you run around the room for 30 seconds and just say why. And this can be work or life. So it could be like, I'm a 3, I'm stressed out about this meeting later today, or we've got our board thing coming up. But I'm not quite a 2 because it's actually my birthday this weekend. So I'm kind of excited about that. And my family's taking me out. Like that, how long did that take? I don't know, a few seconds, right? And then you run around the room. It's again, it's just like a very simple tool for humanizing the group, creating some shared empathy and psychological safety. So I always say just start at your team level because also that's the level that you like all experience. You're only experiencing it through your 2 eyeballs that you walk around with all day. Like, so your local team experience is how you experience work. So if you can start there, that makes a huge impact. And then if you're the executive team, that's going to scale because what's cool in culture is sourced from power, just like it is in society as well. And so if the executive team is laughing and caring for each other and knows each other, that is palpable. And then if you're not a CEO, just still start with your local team. Even if you have just like a few people around you, whatever the composition is, just start there. Or another like such a stupid, silly trick is just see if you can learn everybody's middle name. Like it's a really easy place to start. It's not an offensive question. But it's also kind of intimate in a way because people are like, oh, it's Mildred, my great grand. You learn something about their family,
For
or
sure.
like you make them blush a little bit because they're like super embarrassed, but that's also kind of cute. Like even just starting there is a really good first step.
I think that that's great. What's your middle name, Bree?
Thanks for asking, Andrea, because I come from a long line of Andrews. So, Andrea.
Well, there you go. Mine is
Yeah, what's you?
Lewis. Mine is
Oh,
Lewis. Yeah. So,
why?
it's my father's my grandfather's on my dad's side. It was his name.
Oh,
Yeah,
and is it like,
that's not as exciting.
I think it's exciting. Is it like the French way, like Louis or Lew?
It is Lewis.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Not as
So,
fancy. You can't go
nope,
by
nope.
Georges Louis,
No, it
but
is not.
still really good.
Yeah. That is so. One time I played in a golf tournament, and they like put your name on the golf cart, and they spelled the first name Goerge instead of George. And so my buddies, to this day, 10 years later, still call me Goerge.
Georges Louis.
Goerge, yeah, so,
Oh, I love it. That's like your alter ego.
yeah, yeah, Goerge for sure. It's a good one. And so I think I think that that makes a lot of sense, and I'm such a fan of just having something actionable that I can do because I think that we all desire and want to have uniformity. It's like I don't know if that I want to bring my whole self to work, but I want to have better connections with my coworkers and my managers and everybody else, and I'm sure that they would like to have that with me. So I think that those are super practical.
Yeah. Sometimes the little things just make the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah. So after you learn middle names, come up with another question that you want to know the names of the pets of everybody on the team. And you could make it like a team offsite thing, or you could just make it your own little checklist of like, I'm going to go about learning all of my colleagues' pets' names. And then just treat it as a side quest to your work.
Yeah. And who doesn't want to talk about their pet, right?
Yeah. You're going to see so many pictures.
And that's going to be so instructive. Like, oh, I didn't know Bree had a giant snake, or I didn't know that that you kept rats in your house. I'm surprised to hear that.
No, it's just the outdoor rats that we keep in New York
Okay,
City.
right.
They're ambient rats around the building.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that those are wonderful. Well, Bree, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people learn more about you? How can they connect with you? And most importantly, where can they get their copy of Today Was Fun, a book about work? Seriously.
Yes. So you can find me at my website, breegroff.com, Breegroff. From there, you can order the book, you can subscribe to my Substack, and you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, if you enjoyed as much as I did, show Bree your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas or somebody that you know really doesn't like their work. Please send this along. Go to Bree Groff, BreeGroff.com for a variety of reasons. Number one, because of what Bree was just talking about. But number two, because she has one of the most unique, coolest websites I've ever seen. So that's reason enough just to go check it out and then pick up your copy of Today Was Fun as well and start realizing that we need to stop skipping Mondays because we're just gonna run out of them at some point. So thanks again, Bree.
Thanks so much for having me.
Till next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.